Hey everybody, welcome to the SaaS Founder Show. Yesterday we had our Tech Issue Tuesday, so we're back here today with our other show, our SaaS Founder Show. So I'm Tony Zayas, joined as always, or almost always, Andy Halko. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm good. Don't worry. I laid out a 1,000-foot cable directly from the line right into my computer. So Hopefully that'll be good today.
Awesome. Well, you're coming
How are you doing?
nice and clear. Doing well. It's busy here at Insivia land, and I'm getting ready for an upcoming vacation. So it's you'll be flying solo next week. So that's what that means. So
what do we have for today?
Yeah. So I think this week will be interesting because we have Mike Shanley. He's the founder and CEO of AIDKONEKT. And AIDKONEKT is a software that automates a complex and resource-intensive process of monitoring humanitarian aid funding opportunities. Mike has an extensive background in this space. Sounds super interesting. It's very different, I think, than any other founder we've had on. So with that, Mike, hey, Mike, how you doing?
Great. Hey, Tony and Andy. Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for spending your time here. We really appreciate it. So I gave the real high level just based on some notes I have here. A little bit more about AIDKONEKT, and what I'd really like to hear is kind of the origin of where did the idea for the business start, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, so quickly, top level, what we got to is humanitarian aid organizations were spending way too many resources trying to win funding. And what that does is it takes resources, funding, and staff time away from delivering impact on the ground through women's empowerment projects, through entrepreneurship projects, through agricultural supply chain projects, through HIV/AIDS projects. So what we wanted to do was make that process more efficient so that more funding could go to the impact on the ground. But that's really where we're at today. For me, as we chatted about briefly before this, I am not a technical founder. I am much more the founder market fit, and had to learn not just the product market fit, but what is a product. So I can get into that in a bit, but my background really started in 2004 in Peace Corps. And I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Eastern Ukraine. My town was in the far east. If you're taking the Trans-Siberian Railroad into Russia, I was the last stop before you got there. I was an English teacher there, worked with a lot of the teachers at my school to get small grant funding for a variety of youth development projects, of education projects, English teaching projects, and really learned a lot about how local organizations operate and maybe how disconnected they can be from the decision makers in the capitals around the world that are allocating the funding. So from there, I then went to get my master's in international studies and humanitarian assistance, and then spent quite a bit of time working in Washington, D.C. At what is USAID's largest contracting firm. And the market for that is the U.S. government puts out about $21 billion a year in grants and contracts that can go to humanitarian aid organizations around the world to deliver their work. And so I worked at the largest firm that received that funding. So think like one of those big consulting firms, I don't know, Deloitte or McKinsey or something like that, but staffed by former Peace Corps, returned Peace Corps volunteers. So it's that interesting dynamic of the consulting firm approach with people that very much come with that mission focused mission focused story. So I worked there for a while, and one of my roles there was meeting with organizations that many were not in Washington, D.C., that wanted to access funding from USAID, and hearing their stories and the great work they're doing. And for almost all of these, as they should, their focus was on how can we better deliver impact around the world, not how can we more efficiently access the funding from this foundation or target how to bid on this contract. So I really learned a lot about the market, and one piece of advice is just, for me, it was having learned about the market. Now I have that founder market fit. So now I understand what are those needs, what are the things that are the nice to haves, which you can't really found a company around that, and then what are the need to haves. And so that was crucial years later when I did start building the software platform. Yes. So how my journey continued from there is in 2013, I left DC to start my own company. I did a consulting firm first of all, because as I said, I'm not a technical background. So that was the business model I knew, was how to do consulting firms. So I started a small consulting firm, and we work with clients around the world to help them win more funding more efficiently. So again, they could put more time and resources to the impact on the ground. And that was 2013. So over the 8 years of running that firm, we built a lot of internal tools, this suite of internal tools and resources that just help us more efficiently deliver the service to our clients. And then I had about 2 years ago, I realized that we had quite a bit to offer, and it would be even more cost effective to our clients if they could just subscribe to it, rather than still having to do a consulting contract. But so I had the idea to start building something then, but we travel a lot. We're used to travel a lot. We had other priorities, and really with the pandemic, that ended travel. That there was no excuse of, okay, I'm going to go to this conference next week. I can get to this the week after that. You're sitting here every day for months straight, over a year. And that really forced me to just focus on, okay, this is when we're going to do it. We're going to build this platform. So yeah, that's really how we got to where we're at.
That's a really interesting story. Before we dive in and unpack a little bit of that, what I would like to ask you is, when you were in the Peace Corps, would you have believed if someone told you that you would fast forward and be the founder and CEO of a software company?
No. And if you had said a SaaS company, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the cool thing has been, so many of obviously Ukraine is known as an IT hub of IT activity. So it's been really cool. Actually, when I did start the company, I went back to some of my former students who are now working in the IT sector in Ukraine to get advice from them on how to build a company. What are I didn't know the difference between a UX and API 2 years ago. And so I spent a lot of time going out to my network and trying to learn from people that I know, how do you do this? And I think one of the big challenges for me was I got a lot of good information on what to do. I found it struggled to prioritize what order to do it in. So I think that was the big challenge that I had, because we fully bootstrapped it. So with the consulting firm, I built it. We have taken no external investment. So the consulting firm, we just use those resources to then internally build and then spin off the software platform. So in order to do it that way, you have to be very, very efficient with the budget.
No, that's a great point. And I was actually going to ask about that. So the consulting firm, you had mentioned earlier, kind of alluded to that point, that you guys built some tools internally for you guys to use. Is that basically the foundation that turned into AIDKONEKT?
Yes, and the consulting firm still exists. That's exactly it. What it is so there's still, with the consulting firm, there are still very unique processes that 100 people don't need. So it still makes sense to have a consultant do that. But we realized there was a lot of things that we were just getting, hey, can you check these 5 sites and then go call this person once a week and send me this report? And then once we get a certain number of those, we realize, well, let's just automate this and we can provide it more cost effectively. And if it's a quality algorithm and quality data, with higher value to the clients. So yeah, it absolutely was developed internally there with those resources. And that really helped us, because it wasn't supposed to be a software platform from the start. It was really, what do you need? Here's the USA $21 billion market. What support do you need? You need this and this. So we really were building everything from scratch. And then it's when we saw the areas with the repetition, then of course you think right away, well, there's an automation opportunity. So we listed out what are all those things that we can automate, and then really built the first version of it around that.
We talked to a number of founders, and I'm always really intrigued by this, is trying to spin a software company out of a consulting firm, or we hear it out of services or agency. what, besides the challenge of not being a technical founder, what's the biggest challenge you would run into trying to build a software product out of an existing consulting firm?
Yeah. Well, a couple things, Andy. One is, so it's okay, well, you automated this. Is there still the need for the consulting services? And as I said, I think it's a rational concern to have before you would do something like that. I think once you do it, you realize, no, there's still plenty of need for the consulting services. You can just deliver higher value. So you're not paying someone an hourly rate to refresh a government website and download a report and send it to you. That part's automated. So you can pay them to analyze it, pay them to help get introductions, to discuss your partnering strategy, to look at to build out your strategy for the next 3 to 5 years for funding opportunities. So yeah, I think maybe that perception. And then once you get into the software space, there's either competition or there's always, I hear all the time, we have no competitors, we're doing something unique. Okay, maybe that's true, but there's still going to be perceived competitors. Oh, I've heard of this. How are you like this? So that was an important thing before we started, is if we're just going to be reinventing the wheel or providing a cheaper version of what's already out there, this isn't worth it. So we really wanted to make sure that we had something better. So I think a great way to do that is what you build with the consulting firm are relationships with the clients, and for us too, with aid associations around the world. So we really spend a lot of time talking to them about, what platforms are you using? Do you love them? No, you don't. Why don't you? What are you still doing in your weekly activities that you don't like? So what we focus, we haven't yet heard from anyone, oh, you automated that, but I really love going to that government website. So I wish I could keep clicking on that. It's really focusing on just helping employee retention, because now you're doing more of the fun stuff, not just doing more of the administrative pieces of it.
So to circle back, Mike, I was going to ask about that challenge of coming into this without having a technical background. We talk to both, technical founders, non-technical founders, and there's something we've seen is that for the non-technical founders, this can be obviously intimidating, challenging. How did you get past that hurdle?
What helped me was honestly podcasts and events like this. And I think what was intimidating to me was hearing, oh, I have to go raise $100 million from some fancy Silicon Valley VC firm. Otherwise, we're not legitimate, or that's just the path to do it. And it wasn't until into the process that I even heard of founder market fit rather than product market fit. It's like, I know this market. I know what not in an arrogant way, but I know the market. I know the people that are going to tell me what they need for it, and having that confidence. And I think starting to see some examples and just hearing that you can bootstrap, you can build a successful, hearing about large firms with very high ARR that are entirely bootstrapped. So I think seeing that is a feasible path. And one thing from the start is I've just been hyper focused on making the consulting firm and now the software successful, and not listening when people say that it can't be done. You do it because no one told me it wouldn't work. If you got an idea that's not working, then, you do want to have some level of self-awareness there, but you also have that focus and confidence. So just a few thoughts on that, Tony.
I haven't heard that term before, actually, founder market fit, but I absolutely.
Oh, okay.
No, but I absolutely love it. And I think it's one to bring out, because we talk about product market fit, and even though I haven't used that term, we've talked about that, founders that know their market really well. And I love, creating it into its own little title like that. So that's great.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And really, so what I knew from the start, talking to the engineering team, is here we needed to do this. Can that happen? This is what the output needs to be. Yeah. And one encouraging thing, once I found that good team of engineers, is them letting me, okay, Mike, nothing you're asking us to do is rocket science. Everything has been done before. So that was encouraging. The automating these processes hadn't been done before, but the back end of what we're doing has been done millions of times. So it's just a matter of figuring out that model for how that had been done. So I think that was an encouraging piece. Once you talk to people, say, yeah, what you're asking for, it's not a very complex AI predictive algorithm or anything.
Right.
It's, yeah, we can do that.
How did you do, obviously you had a consulting firm, and so you were getting some market validation, but for the product itself, what was your process of really validating like a SaaS product for, growth?
Yeah. So, right. We did not take for granted that, okay, everyone's paying us for the consulting services. They definitely want a software platform and they're going to pay an annual fee for that. So the first thing we did is started a paid newsletter that once a month was delivering this information, this analytics that the clients were looking for. And we got some subscribers to that, but it was scalable, but it's not once a month isn't fast enough for a business development team to get their data. They need it more regularly than that. So then we did the design mockup. So that was some good advice I got early on, is to don't start, and actually it's from the engineers. Don't start with the engineers. Don't tell them what you want. Get a designer, show the engineer what you want it to look like. And then go with, and then have them work from that. I find they appreciate it, the final products much better. So, yeah, so that was, that was the process we went through.
No, it's pretty great. And so how did you go about that process of getting design first? Because I again, for our audience that are founders thinking about doing this, you're non-technical. I would assume you're not a designer as well. So how did you take your ideas in your head, translate that to a designer that could help, build something? Yeah.
So sketched it out. So first of all, find a designer. You can, at the level we were doing, you can find someone in a grad school design program, or go on, one of the websites and find a designer. I think for your initial one, you just want someone to make something fancy, to make something formal based on your sketch. So I sort of sketched things out online. And then what we did, sorry to finish the other answer, Andy, we did a lot of user feedback calls. So we took that design and then we scheduled with our current clients, who we've been working with, many of them for years. And we said, hey, here's this new product we're going to offer. We want your feedback on it. And we went to the ones who know the market well and are also have very good relationships with us. So they were going to be very honest. Here's what we're looking at. Does this help? What else are you subscribed to that's already doing this? Does this look repetitive? This is another login. Is that an issue? So really getting a lot of feedback on that. And for us, because it's a lot of public government data, but with government data, it's I like to say that it's all public but not accessible. So what we really are, one analogy is the Weather Channel, where Weather Channel takes public NOAA data and then makes it accessible. We take public procurement data right now from 5 to 10 different sites and then make it accessible into a single nice portal. So learning which are the data sources that are the most important, which piece of those data sources are most important. So doing a lot of user feedback and then iterating. Make sure to, I think what really helps is to have the users feel like they're part of the journey. And then also to keeping them updated. And once you do have subscribers, being very responsive to the subscribers. In our like update emails to our subscribers, we'll let them know, here's the new features, and these are the ones, 75% of these were requested by you in the last month, and we've now added them. So making it very clear that we sincerely and highly value, that's the most important thing, is the feedback from the users. How can we make your life easier? How can we make your team happier? And so making sure, even, maybe some organizations are doing that, but one challenge with anything is you have to do it and you have to let people know you're doing it. So to make sure for those early stage founders is finding what is that unique thing that you're doing, and not just do it, but also communicate it. So maybe that's the piece that was helpful for me, is I'm clearly more in line with the marketing, the business development piece of it. So that's the part that was a natural fit for me, is making sure that people are aware of this value that you're offering. So that can be some, advice to some of those early stage founders starting out.
Yeah, well, I do want to talk about the marketing side of it in a bit here, but I would love to just go back. You mentioned your engineering team. So how did you compile that team? I'd be curious how you found, the right people to be working with you. How did you communicate with them? What did that look like, finding that core team?
Yeah, so I think every one of them came through my network. So what I did, we weren't a tech firm. I didn't really understand how tech firms operated or started up, but I knew people in them. So I knew other founders, knew people that worked in tech. So I really went to all of them and just talked about who are good. This is what I'm looking to do. I need someone that knows data. We need to make it look good on the front. And they're like, okay, well, you want 2 people for that. All right, that's 2-person job. Great. What are the names? What should the scope of work even? I was going on, what was it? Upwork, and just looking at what's a UI, what's a UX, what's an API. And that's kind of where the prioritization came in too. It's what do you need? And then how do you find it? And I think because I was so new to it, I went more with the trusted relationships for the advice. So again, I went to people that I knew, including some of my former students, and said, "Hey, this is what we're looking to do. What do you call this in the software engineering world? Oh, this is what you call it. This is what you need first." So yeah, I think it's the relationships we've built and trusting those to then direct me to the right people is how we've built the whole team.
And would what did you have mentors along the way that helped you down that path as well? It sounds like you did have some connections with people in more technical roles and backgrounds. What did that support network look like for you, whether it be mentors or friends that, were doing something, in line with what you were looking to do?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I've worked with several different mentors in this space. I had one friend, he had started up a pretty successful health tech company, and I sort of had been doing the consulting firm on the side. So again, more just in touch with him on the business growth side. But then when I got to this point, I was like, hey, you built a tech platform. Take me back to the start. What did you do from the start? I know how to do the consulting side of it. Talking with people that had been working at the large tech companies as well. And getting their advice. One thing that I found was difficult was connecting with early stage SaaS founders. So a lot of the podcasts, that's why this is a cool platform. If you're already at 100 million ARR, there's plenty of resources and people that are going to help you out there. If you're bootstrapping, and for some of your founders are under 1 million ARR, or probably have 0, they're probably at the ideation stage, that there is not as many resources out there for them. So I think one thing I focused on was then translating, here's how the tech companies run it. Here's what a product team there looks like. Well, we have 2 people, we have 3 people. How do we replicate that at this stage?
In the, again, and I think I'm kind of honing in on this, like you developing the product because you're not a technical founder. And so I think your insight can help others that are similar. But, if you went back, was there anything that you would have done differently in like the product development, process? And as you've gone through that the last couple of, years, is there anything that you would do differently than you did do?
I mean, I think I would have launched it earlier. I feel like we did it early, but there's some line out there that if you're not embarrassed by the product, you launch too late. And that's just so hard because you want it to be perfect. There's still things I want to perfect about it and add on. And like, all I do is focus on the new features we're going to add and how we're going to make it better and respond to the feedback. So I think having someone tell you that this is good enough, put it out there, get people using it. Don't develop anything in a room in a black box and then just think that it's going to be perfect. Get out there and iterate and fail, fail fast. I think I think we want to fail strategically when you're so you kind of want to know what the options are and learn quickly from them. But yeah, launch earlier.
Yeah, that's great. I think Tony and I could say it's been a common theme, that we've heard is that if you're not embarrassed by what you put out first, you waited too long. And so I think that's fantastic.
It's been like the most popular quote on this show, perhaps.
Oh, is it? All right.
Which is great. I mean, it just proves that point, because I think that's challenging for everyone. When you're creating something, you want it to be perfect or close to it. And it's really challenging to put it out there in front of the world, as big of an audience as you can get, when it's not. But it's such a necessary step to take. So along those lines, what did the MVP look like that you guys took to market?
Yeah, so our MVP, there's one key data point that is this Excel sheet that the government has that's publicly available. It's updated, can be updated any minute of any day by any one of the embassies around the world. So they will have some notes on when it's updated, but that for a lot of organizations, they would check that sheet multiple times a day and just scroll through 250 lines of Excel data and try and see what's changed. So the first thing we did was created an automated ticker that would track everything that's changed on there and say, here are the 5 things that changed today. So in a few seconds, rather than sometimes a half hour, an hour a day, you could get that information. Launch that. Once people started using that and they're like, this is great, then we started building the other features on there. So what we really started with is, what we built up from there is, common questions. What websites do you check every day? When we do like a user feedback call, the ones that would share the screen would be like, actually, can you just tell me what your bookmarks are? Here are the 6 things I bookmark. I click on this, this, and this, and this. All right, great. Those are the next things we'll add into the platform. Yeah.
And Tony and I actually did a show a long while back where we talked about spinning a product out of an existing company. And I just love this concept of you finding pains that were common and that were easy to like streamline and automate, and that becomes a product. And I guess what you're saying just makes me think, like, how many of those opportunities are sitting out there within companies to develop these products that can just, change an industry.
Oh, and so I would say that's another piece of advice. You'll read a Wired article or something like that, like AI algorithms, all business are adapting to this. That doesn't mean every business has already adapted every one of their processes to automation. There is a lot of opportunity, especially again, if for those markets that well. There is a lot of opportunity for that. One of the best pieces of advice I got was start in a market that's so small people don't know it exists, because then you don't have that big competition. Don't go after like Google online ads day one. You're gonna have some competition in that space. Find that march. My niche is, and get it down to one word so people remember you. My niche is USAID. That's it. Anyone that says USAID, anyone that tags USAID, you need help with USAID, you have a question about it, come to us. That's it. So find that small market. So we do accessing procurement data from this one relatively small US government agency that gives out humanitarian aid grants and contracts. That's it. And we're the best at it. So find that small market, become the best at it, find some type of revenue model that can at least, so if you want to grow from there, great. And then you can use that to fund the next piece of it if you do want to bootstrap it, which was our experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think one of the other common themes in our shows is the founders that are successful find a niche and they stay focused on it. And we talk to a lot of just generally founders, and I think the ones that struggle try and boil the ocean too quickly and just struggle with that. So how did you was it just natural because of your consulting firm and where you focused, or was there ever a time when you were doing this where you said, wow, it could be so much bigger, I could do so much more, and you had to reel yourself in?
Oh, absolutely, Andy. And it was for the consulting firm from the start. We were going to be the global emerging markets everything firm. If you're a Fortune 500 going into the Indonesian market, if you need to recruit a sales rep in South America, if you need to fund a project we were going to do everything emerging markets for everything. And I'm like, we got the network, we can do it. We're going to be huge. Let's just build the full thing right away and everything. And it was probably like 2 or 3 years in. So you can get contracts that way. You can make a business. If you're looking for a lifestyle business with no investors, you can make that work that way. But then it's when I said, okay, we're just going to do USAID. That's it. This one international aid, humanitarian aid funder, and we're going to be the best at it. The funny thing was, it was within a month or two of that, then people would come to me, oh, it's not USAID, but can you do this World Bank or the United Nations or this other donor or this other one? Because they have no way to remember you if you are the everything. You got to have that. What's that one key word that they're going to remember you for? Because people, and if you're a nice person, they want to help you. They want you to be successful, but you got to make it easy for them to be it. You can't say, here's my 2-pager, memorize this, and any person you talk to. No, it's here's the one word. If you hear USAID, contact us. That's all you need to know. We'll take it from there. So find whatever those early stage founders, what would your one word, it can be a phrase, but something that's really easy for people to remember, for people that want to help you out, that they can remember, oh yeah, I know this person, they do this. Let's, you should talk to this founder. They have a cool new startup idea they're working on.
So I'm going to throw the question out there. Now as you're solidifying your place in the market with AIDKONEKT, is focusing on USAID. Do you have plans to scale out at some point in time into these other areas where there is opportunity that's very similar?
Yeah, we're definitely looking for, I think any scaling opportunity, we would look to, even at this point, build off of what we have. So not something to recreate the wheel, but of what we've built, what other markets, what other areas would that be valuable for? But what we see is there's still a lot more value we can do within the USAID market. So one is we've automated getting the data to your team, which saves for some people 20+ hours a week of time. But there's further detailed research we can do on effectiveness of projects. So what are the reports? What's the most effective methodology for delivering, for supply chain, cold vaccine supply chains in Kenya? What's the best methodology for increasing the wages of farmers in Bolivia? So we're looking at those ways that we can either directly increase impact or improve impact by helping organizations to reallocate their time to other projects. So yeah, we're definitely, right now we're focused. We got a lot of exciting and new features that we're working on. So I'm very excited. I think one thing that I have learned now that I finally understand, UX and API and some of these other things and what is feasible, what's not, is that now I can kind of like sit back and rethink through, all right, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, what are we going to want to build for that? And I have had to learn and now have a better understanding of what's feasible, what takes a lot of work and it might be worth it, and what's something that's pretty easy. So yeah, I'm excited that I now have that time and bandwidth to more strategically think about it and understand at least enough about the software engineering side to be able to not put a very doable plan in place for the team.
Mike, I was just going to ask, based on kind of all these ideas that you probably have and opportunity, right? And I'm sure you're coming up with things all the time. What does your process look like for prioritizing new features, improvements, anything like that? Like, how do you take that list of ideas, suggestions, input that you have from your team, from users, things you come up with? How do you organize those and prioritize them?
Yeah, so the first thing I do, because I get excited probably about a new idea or feature at least once a week. And so I write it down and then I don't do anything about it for at least a day. I want to let the excitement come down so I can more on an even keel evaluate it against the other ideas. We use Trello and basic develop roadmaps in like Google Suites, Google Sheets, Google Docs. And so putting the ideas on there and then just whenever those ideas come up or in Slack, just making sure that we're capturing them in one spot. And then once a month, once a quarter, revisiting those. And it goes back to prioritization, prioritizing which of these are the top priority. And so we'll have like another strategy meeting next month. And what we'll start with is not the ideas we had, but the user feedback. What are the issues we need to solve? And then here's this list of 20 really cool ideas that I'd love to build, but I'm not going to let myself build them unless I can point, not just because I think this is cool and I want it on there. We got to make sure that there's a real user need for this. So I think documenting them and then having some type of regular strategy meeting, that would be a great time to bring in mentors to kind of like help think through that, and to make sure it matches against the user feedback. Or if it doesn't, if it's a new idea, sometimes users just like, oh, I didn't think we could automate this. So maybe in your user feedback calls can be talking through some of the new ideas. Hey, we're thinking about this. How do you currently do this process? Yeah.
That's great. And I again, common themes, I think I find that founders and anybody that's working on software that develops a unbiased, logical approach to making these decisions, which it sounds like you are trying to do that, ends up being more successful, because it's easy to get excited by an idea and, jump into it and say, hey, developers, start working on this. But if you haven't evaluated what's the outcome for your users, how much effort is it going to take, is it validated, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah. And yeah, you're working in the dark. Maybe you'll randomly accidentally pick the right thing to do, but it makes it much less likely. Definitely, Andy. Yeah.
Do you find, and this is just something that came to my head, we talk a lot with software companies about 20% of the features are what 80% of the users really focus on and use. Have you found that in your space, is that that there are certain things that people use and there's stuff that's kind of on the periphery that you find out people aren't as interested in?
Yeah, or what you have is there's a very small group that's highly interested in a certain one. So we have broken our clients into like 3 different segments, and are at the point of understanding that's exactly it, Andy. We're working at which features are most valuable to the different client segments. So some are the established organizations that have been doing this for years that we're automating what they already know, and other ones are ones that just say that's $21 billion is a lot of money. I have no clue how to start working on that. So here's like step 1, step 2, and step 3 for getting into that.
And I know, Tony was going to bring this up a little bit earlier, but marketing is always an interesting topic for us. I'm curious. So obviously you had the consulting firm, so you were able to probably find a user base early, but how did you end up tapping that out and then finding new strategies to grow users for your software? And what was that? How did you transition from, here are my current relationships, to, let me scale our user base?
Yeah. So really the main thing is providing free, valuable resource. So honestly, what you all are doing with this podcast series is, here's our name, here's what we do, doing sales pitch, here's a valuable resource. You're going to watch this video just to learn something. That's it. So what ours is how to access, this is federal funding. The frustrating, interesting piece of it is that to bid on an aircraft carrier contract or a HIV/AIDS grant in Malawi is about the same process for the federal government. So helping people understand, how does that process work? So we regularly do USAID Funding 101 intro events to USAID. USAID's even invited us to their events to speak there. So I think that's been a good branding thing, is when USAID invites us, we're on the agenda with them, sharing our resources and how it's easier to access funding from them. And then I guess the other things, so I guess it's like that core content, also partnering with a lot of conferences leading up to this. One thing that we built off a lot from the consulting firm is all of these AID conferences around the world that we've presented at, that we have the marketing. I've stayed in touch with people from it. So we built up quite a large mailing list. We have 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. And all this is by putting out a lot of really valuable content. So I would say let the content lead things. One thing we've started doing is a webinar series, again, similar to what you all are doing, where we invite current and former senior USAID staff on just to share whatever they want. We have a platform for them to reach the partners audience, the partners that they work with around the world. So whatever message they want, whatever strategy they want to promote, just providing a nice, friendly platform for them to share that experience. And then people come to that, they see AIDKONEKT, and if they want to learn more, they can message us after it. But it's putting those free resources out there that people are actually going to use and are going to share.
I'm curious, Mike, if you employed any, just especially early on, just to get some traction, any just kind of growth hacks where you were just, doing some guerrilla style marketing efforts just to get in front of people, the standard ones, SEO, paid advertising, all that stuff takes budget, takes time, takes, all that kind of stuff. Anything that you could share that, worked for you that someone could just roll up their sleeves and kind of get some results?
Yeah. So for me, it was speaking at conferences, and it's finding that niche. So no one else was talking about how to access USAID funding. And so going to conference and saying, hey, I got all the content for you. I'm not charging anything. Just put me on the agenda. I'll go in a side room. We'll do a USAID 101 event, do it the first year at the conference. If people show up, great. If they don't, whatever, it's my time. I'm paying to get there and everything. So find those conferences, find that platform, become a guest on there, figure out what your, for us, it's a 4-step approach to getting USAID funding, the 4 Ps. What's your 3-step, your 5-step, whatever your program is. And then share that content widely to get your name out. And then you want to have, if you are really early stage, use MailChimp or something and just start a free account to start collecting. People can subscribe. You want to learn more, have at least like that, your landing page up so you can start collecting information. People that are interested in following the journey might be potential clients. But yeah, find that core piece of value that you have the insight, and maybe this goes back to that founder market fit, and then figure out the platforms to push it out on. And you will get, half the conferences are going to respond and say, great, we'd love to feature you for $30,000 sponsorship fee. But you're going to find some that don't require that, and see that value, see the audience you're going to attract by being there. So yeah, I think that's the thing. The earned media, to put it in journalism terms, is really helped out. And honestly, it's still the core of what we're doing now. Sure, we're doing some of the paid stuff, but it's really the earned media piece that I find is the most valuable.
And these conferences and things, is that something you were already participating in, and then you said, let me try to speak at them?
Yes, both. I would do both. I would try to contact the organizers beforehand. And for most that aren't going to respond to anyone that's not ready to write a sponsorship check, show up at them. And while you're there, find them in person, say, hey, this is awesome. Really excited about it. Want to support, the planning for next year. Can I get your email? Can we stay in touch? Mm-hmm. So going there and then seeing what's on their agenda. What do they want to highlight? Conferences, understand whoever you're talking with, what's their business interest, what's their personal interest. A conference, they want more people to pay to come to it, and they want more people to sponsor it. So how are you going to raise the awareness of that conference among a new market? So a couple different European aid conferences work with us because they have very little following in the North American aid market. So they're like, hey, Mike, can you come speak at it? Also, can we, we'll post some stuff on LinkedIn about here's this conference in Europe. If you're interested in for the American side to get into that market. So understanding that business interest behind it too, and making sure you stay focused on that. Hey, it's not a sales pitch. We're putting out really valuable information. It's going to increase your registrations. And we'll, promote it to our network too, that we're participating in this conference.
And I kind of just want to pull out one point, because I'm such a, I'm so focused on people niching down, is that I actually think that strategy is also what helps you with what you just mentioned with getting speaking engagements at conferences. If you're going in and saying, I can talk about funding, there's 1,000 people. If you talk about grant funding, it's this. But then if it's, something extremely narrow, those speakers are the people that get placement at conferences. So I just want to kind of pull out the fact that your whole concept of niching down, being focused, also helps you in that guerrilla marketing, right?
That's a great point. Yeah, and it does keep you focused. You're absolutely right, Andy. So if I had gone and said, I'm an emerging markets expert, I know something about every country in the world and how to enter them, and like, who's gonna put you at that? No, there's no relevance there. But here's this small area that we're the niche specialist on. So yeah, if I'd said we're grant writing specialists, here's how you write a grant. That's just it's valuable, but it's very general. Okay, grant for who? Which foundation? Which association? Which donor? So yeah. Andy, I think I think going off what you're saying is that also helps you keep focused on the market, because if the conference has thousands of people at it, well, someone's interested in something, like they're paying to be there. So now what is that they're paying? I would go to some of the sessions and see which ones have the most participation. Actually, Tony, one other idea too. Yeah, when you do attend those conferences early on, when you're not speaking, and I just remember this, what I do, I look on the agenda. I actually don't go to learn much, I go to network. So I look at what on the agenda is interesting, and then I show up at them right before the Q&A starts. And then I'll find whoever has the microphone and make sure I'm sitting next to them. And you want to listen a little bit so you have some context. But then, you want to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Mike Shanley with AIDKONEKT. We make it easier to access USAID funding. And so I had a question about one of the speakers or one of this, and make sure it's a relevant question. But that's a good way that you can get 100 people in the room. And then I would ask a question like that and just sit there till everyone's left the room, and maybe one person comes up and talks to me. So that's another way that you can and then you do that 2 or 3 different times, and then spend the rest of the time working the exhibitor booths and stuff. I find that's an effective way to network and find clients, supporters at conferences.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. Mike, I would just love to hear a little bit about the team that you have behind you, and how this is something that I think founders, it's important for founders to be successful, is how do you maintain, first of all, a healthy culture, but then also how do you communicate your vision and what you were looking to accomplish, especially early on, to this team of people, as we bring people on and get them on board with that?
Yeah, so the first thing I start with, if it's a consultant, if it's a employee, is lifestyle. So we have been remote since 2013 when I started, way pre-COVID. What do you want? What's your lifestyle like? Are you training for a marathon? Are you getting ready to go to grad school? Are you starting a family and you need more money, or need more time? What is that? And then what are our business needs? And then where's that match? Where can we have that where you can go sit, from the start? I encourage people, go work on a beach in Mexico, go hang out in the mountains in Nepal, do whatever. Just make sure there's a good Wi-Fi connection. I don't care where you are. So really starting with that flexibility and being very focused on the outputs, not the inputs. So we need you working X hours a week. No, this has to get done. If you can do it in 5 hours, awesome. Great. Go for a hike after that, or enjoy the rest of the time. So really focusing on that. And then in terms of communicating the mission, so I think it is easier to communicate if you are, say, like our clients, who it's clearly, we are working directly with the Women's Entrepreneurship Association of Columbia, and we have increased this many more students are going to school. We've increased coffee farmers' wages by this. Like, that's great. We're enabling that type of activity. So it's we are helping organizations on overhead run that much more efficiently. That can sound boring, but that really means thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions and more dollars are going to these projects on the ground. So I think also making sure everyone on the team is connected to the clients and can really feel that positive feedback, that reinforcement of, wow, we have this extra money, or we won this new funding without having to distract from this project work we're implementing. This is great. Here's the impact we're delivering on the ground. So for me, it's not like a big annual conference we do where here's a keynote. It's really like every week, every day in our meetings, just thanking the team and reminding them, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're here. We are here to make of this $21 billion because of us, we will increase the impact that has globally. So really starting with that and being sincere and genuine about it. We want people to work as efficiently as possible. If anyone says, hey, here's a new subscription, a new tool that costs tens of dollars, a couple $100 a month, I'm like, great, if this is going to save you time, make you happier, all right, let's subscribe to that. I'm sure there's 30 plus monthly SaaS type of things that we're subscribed to. There might be more than that. But really making sure that the team knows that we're focused on retention. You'll hear about some big firms or maybe smaller firms too that just want to maximize burnout and get people to leave. And sure, that's a model. It's not the model that we like to do. We want people to stick with us for a while, and to really make sure that they feel part of the mission and then are well compensated and see their compensation tied to that.
That's great.
So what's the future hold? What's the next 3 to 5 years look like for yourself and the company?
Yeah. Honestly, Andy, that's kind of like what that's where I'm at now, is asking myself that question. I think that's the rest of this year is, with getting AIDKONEKT launched, and we're still on the growth track too. But really, I now am just getting the bandwidth from that launch and getting that user base, and now we have the funding and everything, to start thinking about that. Okay, great. What is next? How can we build off of this to make aid even more efficient globally? So yeah, I think that's the point I'm at now, which I think it's a good spot to be at. But I'm excited about that, about how to really solidify what we've built, keep us on a path for growth, and always looking at, what is that next venture or project. I think the only thing I know is it's going to be related. I'm not, I won't go recreate the wheel on some other thing. I've just seen when you have that, when you know that industry, and when you try to start a company in a new industry, you just don't realize everything that you just passively pick up by being inside at a firm in that industry. Sure, you can kind of learn some things from the outside and maybe you'll get it right. But I think just intuitively knowing those needs, how those firms operate, how your clients operate, is really invaluable in the time it saves you as you're developing the products.
It reminds me of, if you ever read or heard of Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about the hedgehog concept of just get really focused, and great companies are the ones that double down on what they're, they can be the best at the world in, and they just stay focused on that. So I think that's really smart of you to go down that path.
Especially when you're early stage. So for the listeners who are early stage SaaS, even if you get investors, they don't want you working on 10 different products before you have any proof of concept. They'll probably, I would, again, we didn't go through the investment process, but I understand they'll probably make you be even more focused than you would on your own. Like, we need money. So how are things looking? So yeah, I think that's great. And once you make that work, you build a successful company by focusing on one niche. Well, now you have, maybe Andy, this will get into what we'll think about next. Now you have that flexibility to make the decision for what you want to do next. And hopefully for a lot of listeners, you get to a point where you can now make a decision that's not based on, okay, well, what's going to make me the most money, but what's going to make me the most fulfilled? How can I really give back? How can I do what I think is my role, my purpose, what's best in the world? So I think getting to that point is a really exciting place to get to, when in a really fulfilling piece of the journey too.
It's awesome. So you've mentioned a couple times, the lifestyle business, and that type of thing. So I'm curious, we talk about, being a founder and the demands of that. How do you maintain work-life harmony?
Yeah, for me, so it's a lot of trail running, hiking. For me, it was fitness. I think one important thing for founders too, is it's a journey to learn about yourself and how you operate. Do you really work well at night? Are you a morning person? What's the most effective schedule for you? How many miles a week should you run to not burn out, but to have that energy to be focused? Or if it's nature walks or whatever it is that you like to do, figuring out what is that routine. That's, for me, it's a lot of activity, rock climbing, running, hiking, but learn what is that keeps you mentally fit. I mean, I like to study or read about even like the chess grandmasters. That chess seems like, well, why would you do any physical activity for chess? They're running, they're lifting, they're training their bodies for a chess tournament. where they're going to sit down all day so that they can stay focused for 12 hours straight. So for me, that's what it's finding that right balance of endurance, which then can keep you focused for the longer periods of time. But really finding what is that routine that works best for you. For me too, I think maybe I would emphasize it, just because I hear the opposite emphasized, is if I'm sleeping 9 hours a night, that's awesome. And I try to do that every night. I don't do 4 hours of sleep. I mean, I've had those nights, of course, but that's not the goal. Is how can I do the most on 3 or 4 hours of sleep? I read about some athlete that he's like, I had a really bad year and I don't know why. I was up to 11 p.m. every night. I woke up at 4 a.m. I got 5 hours of sleep every night. I was at the gym every day. I was doing this. I'm like, well, that's why you had a bad season, because you slept 5 hours a night. Sleep is really, really important. Sure, you can do a stretch without it, but in my opinion, so yeah, that'd be what was important for my routine.
Yeah, that was a weird trend for a while, where the badge of honor was how little do you sleep and how much do you work, and I definitely think that's at least kind of gone a little bit.
Okay, you're not hearing. Okay, you all would be much more in tune with that, because that's when I hear that. Oh, I did this with 5 hours. I'm like, wow, what would you have built if you got 8 hours of sleep a night? You would have had a great company.
I think your young founders like love that concept, but once you get a little bit of experience and age, you realize that it's work smart, not hard.
Absolutely, Andy. Yep.
So before our last question, tell our audience a little bit about where they can find you and AIDKONEKT and more.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So LinkedIn's the best platform. I'm sure we could put it in the comments after this, but AIDKONEKT, spelled words, see my name here, AIDKONEKT. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, Mike Shanley. That would be the best place. And yeah, feel free to connect and message me. I'm always happy to talk to other founders and hear what else is going on.
Great. So the question I like to ask everybody at the end, if you were able to go back in time to before you started the business and give your younger self some advice, what advice would you give?
Focus. Those first 3 years where I was trying to do everything, focus. And I still don't know if I would have listened, even if it was myself talking. It could be a futile exercise, but that's what I would try to convince myself is focus. The only way you get big is by starting in a super small niche area and then grow from there. But you don't get big in 10 areas at once. You make one work and then you expand to another one from there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been fantastic. We really appreciate you taking the time here with us, and I'm sure so with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up here this week. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks again, Mike. And to our viewers, we will see you again. You'll actually see Andy next week.
Well, Andy and Tony, thanks a lot. This was a pleasure talking with you all, and thank you for putting out this great resource to the market and the community. So thank you all for the work.
Very welcome. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.